struggle humper for the flesh lump eater. ASMR guy. There is always having 50 winks before they go scumbering off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said. He looked for a few moments to let Sophie see. Giants is only sleeping every now and then, he said. Not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that a human being who is 50 has been spending about 20 years sleeping fast? I must admit, that never occurred to me, Sophie said. You should allow it to occur to you, the BFG said. Imagine it, please. This human being, who says he is 50, has been fast asleep for 20 years and is not even knowing where he is, not even doing anything, not even thinking. It is a funny thought, Sophie said. Exactly, the BFG said. So what I was trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he is 50 is not 50, he is only 30. What about me? Sophie said. I am 8. You is not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies and little chidlers is spending half their time sleeping, so you is only 4. I'm 8, Sophie said. You may think you is 8, the BFG said, but you has only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. You was only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titchy little snapper whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who is hundreds of years more than you. How much do giants sleep? Sophie asked. They are never wasting much of their time snozzling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough. When do you sleep? Sophie asked. Even less, the BFG said. I is sleeping only once in a blue baboon. Sophie, peeping out from my pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now than when they were awake. Sprawled out across the yellow plain, they covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying on their backs, with their enormous mouths wide open, and they were snoring like foghorns. The noise was awful. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air. Like gum frog, he cried. I was just having the most whoopsie-whiffling idea. What? Sophie said. Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. Just wait to see what I is going to bring about. He galloped off so fast to the cave, with Sophie hanging on tight to the rim of the pocket. He rolled back the stone and entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving quickly. You stay where you is in my pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We is doing this lovely bit of buck swashing both together. He laid aside the dream-catching net, but hung on to the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing, the one that he had been carrying when Sophie had first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in the one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. saliva. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squiggling, squirming, faintly scarlet trogglehummer into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips, and he aimed the instrument directly at Trogglehummer's face. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheek, and then woof, he blew. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting towards the giant's face. For a second it hovered above the face, then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up the giant's nose, but it all happened very quickly, and Sophie couldn't be sure. "We had better be skittling away quick to where it is safe," the BFG whispered. He trotted off for about 100 yards, then he stopped. He crouched low to the earth. "Now," he said, always waiting for the gun and flames to begin. They didn't have to wait long. The air was suddenly pierced with the most fearful roar that Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the flesh-lump-eater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wriggle and twist and bounce about in the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch. "Yow!" roared the flesh-lump-eater. "Aye! Ooh!" "He is still asleep," the BFG whispered. "The terrible Trogglehummer nightmare is beginning to hit him." "It serves him right," Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for this great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps. "Save us!" cried the flesh-lump-eater, thrashing about madly. "He is after me. He is getting me." The thrashing of limbs, the waving of arms became more and more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch, such a massive creature having such mighty convulsions. "It's Jack," bellowed the flesh-lump-eater. "It's the grueful, scrumptious Jack. Jack is after me. Jack is whack-crackling me. Jack is spike-sticking me. Jack is splush-plunking me. It's the terrible, fright-swiping Jack." The flesh-lump-eater was writhing about the ground like some colossal, tortured snake. "Oh, spare me, Jack," he yelled. "Don't hurt me, Jack." "Who is this Jack he is on about?" Sophie whispered. "Jack is the only human being all giants is frightened of," the BFG told her. "They is all absolutely terrified of Jack. They is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer." "Save me!" screamed the flesh-lump-eater. "Have mercy on this poor little giant, the beanstalk. He is coming at me with his terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Take it away. I is begging you, Jack. I is praying you not to touch me with your terrible spike-sticking beanstalk." Us giants, the BFG whispered, is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We is only knowing that he is a famous giant killer, that he is owning something called a beanstalk. We is also knowing that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing, and Jack is using it to kill giants. Sophie couldn't stop smiling. "What is you giggling about?" Sophie asked her, slightly nettled. "I'll tell you later," Sophie said. The awful nightmare had now gripped the great brute to such an extent that he was tying his whole body in knots. "Do not do it, Jack," he screeched. "I was not eating you, Jack. I is never eating human beings. I swear I has never gobbled a single human being in all my wholesome life." "Liar," said the BFG. Just then, one of the flesh-lump-eater's straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into the battle, and in a bellowing, thumping, rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another got either stepped on or kicked. Soon all nine of them were on their feet and having the most almighty free-for-all. They punched and they kicked and they scratched and bit and butted each other as hard as they could. Blood flowed, noses went crunch, teeth fell out like hailstones. The giants roared and screamed and cursed. For many minutes, the noise of battle rolled across the giant yellow plain. BFG smiled, a wide, big smile of absolute pleasure. I is loving it when they's all having a good tough and rumble, he said. They'll kill each other, Sophie said. Never, BFG answered. Those beasts is always pishing and walloping at one another. Soon it'll be getting dusky, and they'll be golloping off to fill their tummies. They're coarse and foul and filthy, Sophie said. I hate them. As the BFG headed back to the cave, he said quietly, we certainly was putting that nightmare to good use though, wasn't we? Excellent use, Sophie said. Well done, you. Chapter 14. Dreams. The big friendly giant was seated at the great table in his cave and was doing his homework. Sophie sat cross-legged on the tabletop nearby, watching him work. The glass jar containing the one and only good dream they had caught that day stood between them. The BFG, with great care and patience, was printing something on a piece of paper with an enormous pencil. What are you writing? Sophie asked him. Every dream is having its special label on the bottle, the BFG said. How else could I be finding one I'm wanting in a hurry? But you can really tell what sort of dream is going to be simply by listening to it, Sophie asked. I can, the BFG said, not looking up. But how? Is it the way it hums and buzzes? You is more or less right, the BFG said. Every dream in the world is having a different sort of buzzy hum music. These grand swashbuckling ears of mine is able to read that music. By music, do you mean tunes? I is not meaning tunes. Then what do you mean? Human beings is having their own music, right or left? Right, Sophie said. Lots of music. And sometimes human beings is very overcome when they is hearing wondrous music. They is getting shivers down their spindles. Right or left? Right, Sophie said. So the music is saying something to them. It is sending a message. I do not think the human beings is knowing what that message is, but they is loving it all the same. That's about right, Sophie said. But because of these squiffling ears of mine, the BFG said, I is not able to hear the music that dreams is making, but I is understanding it also. What do you mean understanding it? Sophie said. I can read it, BFG said. It talks to me. It's like a language. I find that a little hard to believe, Sophie said. I'll bet you is also finding it hard to believe in Quackwinkles, the BFG said. And how they is visiting us from the stars. Of course I don't believe that, Sophie said. The BFG regarded her gravely with those huge eyes of his. I hope you will forgive me, he said, if I tell you that human beings is thinking they is very clever, but they is not. There is nearly all of them not much and all squeak pips. I beg your pardon, Sophie said. The matter saving my teacher from drowning. I is diving into a river from a high bridge. And I is dragging my teacher to the bank. And I is giving him the kiss of death. The kiss of what? Sophie asked. The BFG stopped writing and raised his head slowly. He rested his eyes on Sophie's face. I was telling you once before, he said quietly, that I was never having a chance to go to school. I is full of mistakes. It is not my fault. I do my best. You is a lovely little girl, but please remember that you is not exactly must know everything yourself. I'm sorry, Sophie said. I really am. It is very rude for me to keep correcting you. The BFG gazed at her for a while longer, then he bent his head again to his slow, laborious writing. Tell me honestly, Sophie said, if you blew this dream into my bedroom when I was asleep, will I really and truly start dreaming about how I saved my teacher from drowning by diving off the bridge? More, the BFG said, a lot more, but I cannot be scribbling the whole crop-flunking dream on a titchy bit of paper. Of course there is more. The BFG laid down his pencil and placed one massive ear close to the jar. For about 30 seconds he listened intently. Yes, he said, nodding his great head solemnly up and down. This dream is continuing very nice. It has a very hunky-dory ending. How does it end? Sophie said. Please tell me. You would be dreaming, the BFG said, that the morning after you were saving your teacher from the river, you was arriving at the school and you were receiving all the 500 pupils sitting in the assembly hall and all the teachers as well. And the head teacher is then standing up and saying, I was watching the whole school to give 3 cheers for Sophie because she is so brave and saving the life of our fine arithmetic teacher, Mr. Figgins, who was unfortunately pushed off the bridge into a river by our gym teacher, Miss Amelia Upscotch. So 3 cheers for Sophie. And the whole school is cheering like mad, shouting bravo, well done, and forever after that, even when you was getting your sums all conks whistled and muggled up, Mr. Figgins is always giving you 10 out of time. And writing good work, Sophie, in your exercise book. Then you was waking up. I like that dream, Sophie said. Of course you was liking it, the BFG said. It's a whiz wizard. He licked the back of the label and stuck it on the jar. I was usually writing a bit more than this on the labels, he said, but he was watching me and making me jump, see. I'll go and sit somewhere else, Sophie said. Don't go, he said. Look in the jar carefully. I think you'll be seeing this dream. So he peered into the jar, and there, sure enough, she saw the faint, translucent outline of something about the size of a hen's egg. There was a touch of colour in it, a pale sea green, soft and shimmering and very beautiful. There it lay, this small, oblong, sea green, jellyish thing at the bottom of the jar, quite peaceful, pulsing gently, the whole of it moving in and out ever so slightly, as though it were breathing. It's moving, Sophie said. It's alive. Of course it's alive. What do you feed it on? Sophie asked. It is not needing any food, the BFG told her. That's cruel, Sophie said. Everything alive needs food of some sort, even trees and plants. The north wind is alive, the BFG said. It is moving. It touches you on the cheek and lands on the hands, but nobody is feeding it. Sophie was silent. This extraordinary giant was disturbing her ideas. He seemed to be leading her towards mysteries that were beyond her understanding. Sophie was silent. A dream is not needing This is the latest jar among the thousands of others. Please can I see some of the other dreams? Sophie asked him. The BFG hesitated. Nobody has ever seen them before. But perhaps, after all, I was letting you have a little peep. He picked her up off the table and stood her on the palm of one of his huge hands. He carried her towards the shelves. Over here is some of the good dreams, he said, the fifth wizard. Would you hold me closer so I can read the labels? Sophie said. My labels is only telling bits of it, the BFG said. The dreams is usually much longer. The labels is just to remind me. Sophie started to read the labels. The first one seems long enough to her. It went right around the jar, and as she read it, she had to keep turning it. This is what it said. Today I was sitting in class, and I discover that if I was staring very hard at my teacher in a visual way, I was able to put her to sleep. So I keep staring at her, and in the end, her head drops onto the desk, and she goes fast to sleep and snorkles loudly. Then in marches the head teacher, and he shouts, "Wake up, Miss Plumbridge! How dare you go to sleep in class? Go fetch your hat and coat and leave this school forever. You were sacked." But in a jiffy, I was putting the head teacher to sleep as well, and he just crumbles slowly to the floor like a lump of jelly, and there he lies, all in a heap, and starts snorkeling even louder than this Plumbridge. And then I hear my mummy's voice saying, "Wake up, your breakfast is ready." What a funny dream, Sophie said. It's a ring, Bella, the BFG said. It's whoopsie. Inside the jar, just below the edge of the label, Sophie could see the putting to sleep dream lying peacefully at the bottom, pulsing gently, seeing green like the other, but perhaps a trifle larger. Do you have separate dreams for boys and for girls? Of course, the BFG said. If I was giving a girl's dream to a boy, even if it was a really whoopsie girl's dream, the boy would be waking up and thinking what a rotten, ugly, green, sludgy old dream that was. Boys would, Sophie said. These here is all the girls' dreams on this shelf, the BFG said. Can I read a boy's dream? You can, the BFG said, and he lifted her to a higher shelf. The label on the nearest boy's dream read as follows. I was making myself a marvellous pair of suction boots, and when I put them on, I was able to walk straight up the kitchen wall and across the ceiling. While I was walking upside down on the ceiling, my big sister comes in, and she started to yell at me, as she always does, yelling, "What on earth is you doing up there, walking on the ceiling?" I look down at her and smiles, and I says, "I told you was driving me up the wall, and now you has done it." I find that one rather silly, Sophie said. Boys wouldn't, the BFG said, grinning. It's another ring, Bella. Perhaps you have seen enough now. Let me read another boy's one, Sophie said. The next label read, The telephone rings in our house, and my father picks it up and says in his very important telephone voice, Simpkins speaking. Then his face goes white, and his voice goes all funny, and he says, What? Who? And then he says, Yes, sir, I understand, sir, but surely it is me you was wishing to speak to, sir, not my little boy. My father's face is going from white to dark purple, and he is gulping like he is a lobster stuck in his throat. Then at last he is saying, Yes, sir, very well, sir, I will get him, sir. Then he turns to me, and he says in a rather respectful voice, Is you knowing the President of the United States? And I says, No, but I expect he is hearing about me. Then I was having a long talk on the phone and saying things like, Let me take care of him, Mr. President. You bungle it all up. for school. Boys are crazy, Sophie said. Let me read this next one. Sophie started reading the next label. I was having a bath, and I was discovering that I pressed quite hard on my tummy button. A funny feeling comes over me, and suddenly my legs is not there, nor is my arms. In fact, I have become absolutely invisible all over. I is still there, but no one can see me, not even myself. So my mummy comes in and says, "Where is that child? He was in the bath a minute ago, so he can't possibly have washed himself properly." So I says, "Here I is." And she says, "Where?" And I says, "Here." And she says, "Where?" And she says, "Here." And she yells, "Henry, come on, quick." And when my dad rushes in, I was washing myself, and my daddy sees the soap floating around in the air. But of course, he is not shouting, seeing me, and he shouts, "Where are you, boy?" And I says, "Here." And he shouts, "Where?" And I says, "Here." And he shouts, "Where?" And I says, "Here." And he says, "The soap, boy, the soap, it's flying in the air." And I pressed my tummy button again, and now I is visible. My daddy is squiffy with excitement, and he says, "You is the invisible boy." And I says, "Now I is going to have some fun." So when I is out the bath, and I have dried myself, I put on my dressing gown and my slippers, and I press my tummy button again to become invisible, and go down into the town, and walk in the streets. Of course, only me is invisible, but not the things I is wearing. So when people is seeing a dressing gown and slippers floating along the street with nobody in it, there was a panic, and everybody yelling, "A ghost, a ghost," and people is screaming left, right, and big, strong policemen is running for their lives. And best of all, I see Mr. Grummet, my algebra teacher, coming out of a pub, and I float up to him and say, "Boo," and he lifts out, rides some crow, and dashes back into the pub. And then I was waking up and feeling as happy as a whiff squidler. "Pretty ridiculous," Sophie said. All the same, she couldn't resist reaching down and pressing her own tummy button to see if it worked. Nothing happened. Dreams are very mysterious things, the BFG said. Human beings is not understanding them at all. Not even their brainiest Procephos is understanding them. Had you seen enough? "Just this last one," Sophie said. "This one here." She started reading. I has written a book, and it is so exciting that nobody can put it down. As soon as you have read the first line, you is hooked on it. You cannot stop until the last page. In all the cities, people is walking in the streets, bumping into each other, because their faces is buried in my book. The dentist is reading it and trying to fill teeth at the same time. But nobody minds, because they is all reading it too. In the dentist's chair, drivers is reading it while driving, and cars is crashing all over the country. Brain surgeon is reading it while they are operating on brains, and airlines is reading it going to Timbuktu instead of London. Football players is reading it on the field because they can't put it down, and so is Olympic runners while they is running. Everybody has to see what is going to happen next in my book, and when I wake up, I am still tingling with excitement at being the greatest writer in the world. Until my mummy comes in and says, "I was looking at your English exercise book last night, and really, your spelling is atrocious, and so is your punctuation." "That's enough for now," the BFG said. "There is dillions more, but my arm is getting tired holding you up." "What are all those over there?" Sophie asked. "Why have they got such tiny levels?" "That," the BFG said, "is because one day I was catching so many dreams that I was not having the time or energy to write out long labels. But there is enough to remind me." "Can I look?" Sophie said. The long-suffering BFG carried her across is only an 8-year-old little boy, but I is growing a splendid bushy beard, and all the other boys is jealous. I is able to jump out of any high window and float down safely. I had a pet bee that makes rock and roll music when it flies. What amazes me, Sophie said, is how you ever learned to write in the first place. Ah, the BFG said, I has been wondering how long it is before you was asking me that. Considering you never went to school, I think it's quite marvellous, Sophie said. How did you learn? So, the BFG crossed the cave and opened a tiny secret door on the wall. He took out a book, very old and tattered. By human standards, it was an ordinary-sized book, but it looked like a postage stamp in his huge hand. One night, he said, I was blowing a dream through the window and sees his book lying on the little boy's bedroom table. I wanted it so very badly, you understand, but I was refusing to steal it. I was never to do that. So how did you get it? Sophie asked. I borrowed it, the BFG said, smiling a little. For just a short time, I borrowed it. How long have you had it? Sophie asked. Perhaps only about 80 years, BFG said. Soon I shall be putting it back. And that's how you taught yourself to write? Sophie asked him. I was reading it hundreds of times, BFG said, and I was still reading it and teaching myself new words and how to write them. It is the most scrum-diddly-unctuous story. Sophie took the book out of his hand. Nicholas Nickleby, she read aloud. By Dahl's chickens, BFG said. By who? Just then, there came a tremendous noise of galloping feet from outside the cave. What's that? Sophie cried. That is all the giants sit fizzling off to another country to guzzle human beings. The BFG quickly popped Sophie into his waistcoat pocket, then hurried to the cave entrance and rolled back the stone. Sophie, peeping out of her spy hole, saw all the 9 fearsome giants coming past at full gallop. Where is you off to tonight? Shouted the BFG. We is all of us flush monkey off to England, answered the fleshlamp Peter as they went galloping past. English is a luxurious land, and we is fancying a few nice little English chillers. I, shouted the maid Masha, is knowing where there is a giggle house for girls, and I is guzzling myself full as a froth blower. And I is knowing where there is a boggle box for boys, shouted the gizzard gobbler. All I has to do is reach in and grab myself a handful. English boy is tasting extra lick swishy. In a few seconds, the 9 galloping giants were out of sight. What did he mean? Sophie said, poking her head out of the pocket. What is a giggle house for girls? He's meaning a girls' school, Sophie, said the BFG. It mustn't happen, Sophie cried out. We've got to stop them. We can't just sit here and do nothing. There's nothing we can do, BFG said. We're as helpless as horse feathers. He sat down on a large, craggy blue rock near the edges to the cave. He took Sophie from his pocket and put her down beside him on the rock. It is quite safe for you to be outside,